Welcome to another episode of the Vital MX post-race show, and just when everyone felt as though the 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross balloon had been deflated, we had yet another crazy race, both in 250SX and 450SX, and Detroit, which was round 6 of the current campaign, will live on in the memories of race fans forever. In fact, it will probably be referenced for the next 100 years as an example of X. And we will get into X, because I don't know if I should say positive or negative. There's a lot to unpack. And we're going to do all of that on this episode of the Vital MX post-race show. Of course, we are enabled to do that thanks to Decal Works, Fox Racing, Yoshimura, and Yamaha Motor USA. Thank you to all of those guys for their continued support of what we are doing here. It is much appreciated. We are trying to be better, trying to push on and put our best foot forward. It's round 6. There's a long way to go, a long way to grow. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, as per usual, joined by Michael Lindsay. And as is now routine in this podcast, you probably want to start by giving yourself a massive pat on the back for something, telling everyone what a trooper you are or how great you are. So keep it quick, because we don't really care. But this is your moment.
Just to appease you, Lewis, I went and did 2 20-minute motos today on a turn track. It was super fun. That was my tough morning.
I don't know if that's really good enough, to be honest.
Yeah, it was something.
It was better than can we not do 320s?
Nah, we did a bunch of sprints after that. Then I tried to kill myself doing a corner for a photo. So
okay, well, it's very disappointing.
I know. That's I aim to disappoint.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you have next Sunday that you're very proud of. This is going to be you've dug yourself a hole now. It will be referenced every single week. So we're throwing the rule book out. We're starting with 250s because, and actually no, we're not starting with 250s.
I'll say we're throwing the rule book out by talking about the rule book. Specifically,
let's break down the red flag situation. So before we dive into the do's, the don'ts, the rights, the wrongs, this is the situation. No one really knew, which I don't know who's at fault for that, but prior to 2024 Monster Energy AMA Supercross, the 90% rule was thrown out. The reason it was thrown out is because the 90% terminology was too vague, which I fully understand. How do you define when a race is 90% complete? There could be different definitions of that, and unlikely, admittedly, but if you get in a situation where you red flag a race right on the 90% mark, high chance that you are going to have teams really going at it, trying to argue what side of the coin we should follow.
Does the additional lap count? Well, let's do the math. If they would have, like this weekend, been 7 seconds over the line, it's like, well, does 90% count that extra lap around before the one lap? Or because the rule didn't state 90% of the duration clock, it was a very, as you said, it was very vague.
Yes. So that's first and foremost, and I actually agree with that, because again, although unlikely that we would end up in a situation where we red flag a race right on the 90% mark, you want to protect yourself, and the idea behind eliminating that rule was to make the rule book essentially have no grey area, which is a great thing. Of course, we want a rule book with no grey area. So that makes complete sense. Confusion came from the fact that every rider I spoke about did not know about this. So I think that's on the teams and riders, though. But
yeah, I guess the counter could be like, major changes every year. And I don't know this. I don't know. Preseason, this would be a question for Pelletier. Do they inform? I'm sure they tell the teams like, hey, there's updates to the rule books, but do they also inform them in detail of like, hey, here are the major notable changes? Which on one hand, you could say, maybe they could be better at that, because teams and riders tell me all the time that some stuff gets changed and they really don't know about it. On the other hand, there is a rule book. You're given it every year. If this was F1 or MotoGP, somebody on the team is going to sit there and read the whole thing and make notes about every single change.
Yeah, and what I heard is that somewhere along the line at the start of each season, it is highlighted what rules have changed. I don't know if that's in the rule book, separate to the rule book, adjacent to the rule book, somewhere though.
It's usually like somewhere in the like when they send out an email or something. I remember there's usually some sort of addendum that mentions major things to note that you need to go look at, basically.
But what's added to this confusion is last week in Tampa, during the broadcast, they had a graphic which essentially described red flag rules. And in that graphic, it was claimed the 90% rule still exists. So I'll hold my hands up. I didn't realize that the 90% rule had gone away. And I was adamant that it still exists because I remember seeing that when I watched the race back on TV.
Yeah.
And a lot of fans sent screenshots of that. Some riders said to me they remember seeing it on TV last week. So that didn't help the confusion. But important to note, that was a production mishap on the TV side. The AMA introduced this new rule at the beginning of 2024 and have remained very steadfast in their approach to it. So what the AMA did in Detroit, factually, is stick to the rule book and follow the rule book by the book. So there's no fault there in that respect, which is what I think everyone presumed in the moment. A lot of people felt as though it was just being made up as it went along. So that's that. Second, while it was all going on, and I think if this is important to mention, I was like, right, this is important. So I immediately got in contact with people and said, we need to talk to Mike Pelletier somewhere. Make it happen. Like, it is of paramount importance that we get FaceTime with Mike Pelletier. And to Feld's credit, the AMA's credit, everyone's credit, Mike Pelletier was there looking for me and looking for Kellen because it was us two who were kind of spearheading this and making sure that he had FaceTime with both of us to run us through exactly where this came from, why the rule went away, blah, blah, blah. Like, superb execution from the AMA, Feld, and everyone involved on that side. We like to see that sort of professionalism, and I think it's important to give some credit for that, because I do think that's good, and that's maybe been lacking in the sport in the past. So I wanted to add that in as well. So what we now get into, that's the rules, and officially it was all correct, and there's no reason to debate that. But what we can now debate is the rule the best version of the rule? I'm of the opinion that I completely agree that a 90% rule needed to go away because of the grey area. However, maybe there is an alternative that is better than this. What says you?
I agree. Because, I mean, thinking same, that the 90% rule was still in effect. The moment it got thrown, I look at the clock, 7 seconds. I remember sitting there without missing a beat. Like, race over. Max is the winner. And that's not just the rule. That's what feels right. And from the reactions on social media, from other riders that I've seen comment, a couple of texts with, like, everybody kind of feels that way. Like, you know, there are people I get, like, reading the comments of the interview with Max, like Rob, and they're like, well, Levi beat you, heads up, what happened? Yeah, but the tense of how that situation even came about, I think 95% people kind of agree, like, that should be it. Now, yes, the 90% rule is vague, so I don't know if you go with 250 and 450 mains both have a time clock plus 1 lap. I would say, yes, there needs to be some sort of, just make it a number. Okay, if 12 minutes has elapsed on the 250 clock for a traditional main, you'd have to come up with a rule for Triple Crowns. 450, say it's 17 minutes. I'm not saying my number's right, but just put a hard number. If the time clock has elapsed past this point, this class, the race is over. Something very, again, black and white, no question marks. And make it what the comment is when the red flag is thrown. Because I also know some things about the red flag rule. It mostly has to do with the restart order. All goes off the lap before the red flag is thrown. Basically, the last time that they have a full time of everybody. Which also, actually, I say that does make it tricky if you throw it on, a red flag in the moment. You have to have some sort of fallback for a running order. So I don't know if it would be off the last live timing, because now we have more. What do we usually have per track? Like 8 segments now?
Yeah, 8 or 9.
Either last segment or last full lap. But I say just come up with a hard time for 250 and 450 and have a variation of it for Triple Crown. What say you?
Before we get into that, I just remembered one more rule to clarify, because this confused me greatly as well, and clearly I need to be better at reading the rule book. Because there were 7 seconds left, I presumed we would stagger it and have the white flag almost immediately. But the rulebook explicitly says if the race is restarted, there will be a minimum of 3 laps run. So
Yes.
that is why we had that rollout of laps after the staggered restart, just to clarify. If you want to read about this and properly digest it, I published an article on Vital MX this morning that lays it all out, what Pelletier said to me, blah, blah, blah. So that maybe would be more useful than me trying to fire it all off at once, because this is very intense. I could go for, if there's 1 minute or less left on the clock, it's over. That's very black and white. If it's 1:01, you restart. If it's 59 seconds, you call it. Whilst I understand from an entertainment and a sporting aspect, re-rack them and go again makes sense. That race was over. I feel like when you're at that point where the race is really over, we just call it. I do feel like it was a bit, I don't want to say pointless, because I do understand why we did it. But it just seems a little bit long in the tooth to be re-racking everyone and going again when everyone who's watching around the world, on TV, in person, whatever, was kind of very aware that the result was set in stone and nothing was going to change.
Yeah. So I think there's an argument some people would make, really the decision to me comes down to sportsmanship / professionalism versus going for a spectacle. Yes, the people that want the pure chaos vein of it, and usually I'm a person that votes for chaos, would want the re-rack restart regardless. However, I think our sport should take itself a little bit higher and then that a little bit more serious and just be like, fair is fair. The race was set in stone. The guys did what they needed to do. End it. It's over.
Also, and I thought this in Tampa, and it kind of reinforced this line of thinking in Detroit, I feel like if you start at the front in a staggered restart, you really are at a disadvantage because you are just a sitting duck. Like, there is almost no way without a mistake from the rider behind you that you can just establish enough breathing room to kind of be comfortable immediately. Either you protect the inside and they're going to carry momentum around the outside and then get you on the next straight, or you stick to your normal line and they're going to run it up the inside. Like, I don't really see a fair situation where being first in a staggered restart is going to work out for the leader, the deserved leader, more often than not. So I think that the time, what we do with when we finalize the results, whatever, is one issue. But I think another thing we can maybe look at is making the staggered restart favor the leader more. And so I had this idea earlier. Effectively similar to F1, what about we stagger them? We let them go, but that is essentially a sight lap. You say no passing and wheels on the ground, and then when they get to the finish, green flag, then you go racing. So then the leader at least has some sort of, they have a chance to see the track, which was kind of Max's downfall because he hadn't used the inside in the sand at all. But also that gives the leader the opportunity to strategize, dictate the pace, slow down, speed up. Like, for instance, you could go into the sand. Say you're Max, you go into the sand, Levi's right behind you. You can brake check him and then go. It gives you some room to play a game. I don't know. It's some cause to say you've got an advantage.
I understand everything, but if you're going direct comparison, of course, F1, you're behind a safety car, and there's a lot of rules on pace, because that's one thing in moto that'd be really hard to control is what's minimum and maximum pace, and being able to screw with each other, because there is actual base rules around that.
Wheels on the ground, no passing.
F1, like I said, there's rules because you have a pace car leading you on your sight lap. You're not allowed to go over. We are not allowed to go over a certain pace, and you're also not allowed to go to a certain minimum pace. You'll get penalized. And if we're gonna scrap
that. I like the idea of we can go as slow as we want. That's fun.
Yeah. I either agree with one or two things, either sort of something that staggers them or just straight up some sort of delay between, like, if you have the guy staggering, you have the flagger, you let Max go, flag comes out, next guy hits, you kind of you set just a little bit of stagger.
Like half a second.
Yeah. Instead of just being the first guy raises and they all go, which is always funny for the guy, I feel like, in the back of the row of the 20, because I see the guys that are like 18th going, do I just pin it around the outside? Or like, I can see this confusion of if they are supposed to follow through the first line or not. If you basically had a flagger, I'm trying to think of it more like an off-road race when you're in almost like in a timing stage tunnel. Sometimes they'll do that to you. There'll actually be a guy that's sort of holds you for a second when they do your transfer. Same thing if like, guys stand for Max, let's go, puts flag down, second being Levi hits, and then he just enough to kind of break up that tension. Because like I said, if you're the leader in this situation, you're always screwed. You're 1,000% hosed because the way Supercross tracks are, you cannot. I saw somebody like, oh, Max should have just raced ahead. Well, like Levi did, you just go dive bomb in the first bowl corner you can if you're the guy in second.
Yeah, so ultimately, where Max's downfall is he went outside in the sand. He could have gone inside, which is ultimately where Levi went. But he hadn't used the inside once all race, so that's a massive risk and unknown. Who knows? He radioed to his team in the intermission, or whatever you want to call it, and they said, the outside looks good, just keep doing what you're doing. So although you can say Max should have gone to the inside, it's such an unknown. Like, maybe I don't. So if you're not going to do anything, do you give them a sighting lap just so you can at least look?
Yeah. Well, also, like, even what Levi said, I mean, the insides we saw all night was kind of messy. Levi basically admitted, because it was really hard to. Most guys were struggling with doubling out basically from the middle to the exit. Levi basically said, like, it was do or die. I was either going to crash or double. Like, it wasn't it was definitely not like a for sure plan for Levi. Like, oh, Max left the door open, I'm going to breeze through this section. It was very much, I'm either going to somehow make this work because it isn't a line that really works that well, or I'm going to crash trying.
It is funny how, like, again, going back to the 90% rule, I can't remember the last time that when the 90% rule was in effect, we red flagged a race and just called the result. I'm not even sure that ever happened.
The only thing I can think of is Budds Creek 2009, Jake Weimer.
Oh, wow, we're going back.
That's the only one I can think of, was when the pond burst on top.
Yeah, but was that because of a 90% rule, or was that because of the pond burst?
No, we had elapsed the time so they could call it as a result and give out points. Because if you called it...
But wasn't it in outdoors? Wasn't it halfway mark at that point?
I don't know. I remember it was like 25 minutes that already elapsed. It was pretty far into the moto. But they were able to award points and everything because they were like, yep, it's on. Because, like, I mean, as we've seen the change in the sport as well, and I think Ricky made the joke in the broadcast booth, he's seen more red flags in a year of broadcasting than he saw in his entire career. We used to, definitely the last couple of years, we used to be, I felt like sometimes over a year I wouldn't see a red flag even once, and now I see, every time I go to a race, I see 4 or 5 between practice and heat races and mains.
Well, this is maybe one point that I still want to explore, but I don't really know how you do that. There were 7 seconds on the clock when the red flag came out. So I said to Pelletier, why not just wait 7 seconds? And he said, like, they're effectively at the mercy of the medics, because the medics were calling, like, we need a red flag, we need a red flag. So I kind of want to talk to the medics now and be like, so what is your litmus test for red flag? Now, from what I've heard, they were like, we need more medics on the track to see to Cam. But we've seen medics cross the track before. So presumably they felt like Cam was seriously messed up. And to be fair, watching him laying on the track in like a starfish, it looked really bad. Like, I've never seen someone lay like a starfish.
Well, you look, other than getting hit in the, I mean, he definitely got hit like chest, throat, into face, and you see him hit, and it goes to pop up immediately, and you can tell the total feeling is like, yeah, never mind. He just hits back again. But I know somebody that's talked to Cam since. I believe yours says, like, I think Cam has apologized even to Max. Like, Cam basically, from what I'm aware, was very much like, I'm okay. Don't back brace me. Don't neck brace me. Like, I'm good.
Yeah, Cam, to his credit, messaged Max, I want to say it was like an hour and a half after the main event, and apologized for being the cause of the red flag, and said that he was just trying to get off the track. Like, he felt like he could get out of there. But naturally, the medics are going to take precautions. I'm just interested to see how that dynamic works between the two.
From the next thing that kind of hits me, like, this goes back to F1 or more of a NASCAR, is like, I've talked about this on this pod before, is like the leader light system. Okay, something on the handlebar pad that variates that, something that can inform the riders. Like, it might be interesting to see how it would play out. I'm not saying it's a perfect system by any means. Other than the whole red, like, we have red cross flags for sections, how about lights go up everywhere and basically, like, almost, like, hey, this is roll, everything goes slow. It's sort of like a full course. It's a full course caution, like you see again in F1, like a virtual safety car. Hey, guys need to move stuff off the track. You all have to roll everything, but let's at least try to keep the race going for a lap or two.
Yeah, and McAdoo was very much off the race line. Like, there was no one going to the inside there or in the path where he was. So the 7, it's such a unique situation because, again, rare to see a red flag this late. The 90% rule is gone. To have just 7 seconds on the clock there's a high chance we'll never see that kind of situation again.
We can see him beat it to death, but it may... we say that. It could happen in 2 weeks, but more than likely, the entire time me and you do this podcast, we may never have this discussion again.
Yeah, like, it's just a rarity. But there are... so what you were saying, there are comments out there that are like, well, Max wasn't robbed because he should have just won the race after the restart, which is fair.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
it's the precedence. It's not the performance. It's not I got robbed because Levi got around me. I think we can all, in a sense, like, we're not, nobody's stupid. Nobody's playing participation trophy. It's just like, it was 7 seconds. Come on. If you would have pulled everybody down there, I would venture to say outside of Levi, pretty much everybody would have been like, yeah, race of the 22 guys in the main event, I would venture to guess that around 20 of them would have said, yeah, race is over.
Well, I was really surprised. RJ said to me that he was like really wanting them to just call it because, again, in his mind, the race was over. And if he's saying that, he had the most to gain because he made that mistake early on, clawed his way back to third, needed the points after round 1. This opened the door massively for him. And he was like, yeah, this is done.
Well, our sport falls into a category more like a NASCAR. Like NASCAR tries their darnest to have like a green, white checkered, even if they have to go into what they call overtime and just keep re-racking the guys. It makes for a TV spectacle because sometimes they have to re-rack it multiple times because this whole, 2 laps to go, restart them kind of thing ends in a crash every time. Somebody pushing somebody too hard. 2 laps to go, 3 laps to go in this case, the way it's worded, like, yeah, we could very easily end up with somebody else getting punted pretty good.
Yeah, and just to clarify, McAdoo has been cleared of serious injury. It seems as though all he picked up in the Detroit crash was a nasty cut to his cheek, which required stitches. And yeah, I don't know if the ACL is necessarily better for this crash. I think it might be a little bit worse. Yeah. From what I hear. So, and of course, this opens the door. He's now out of championship contention. So what do they do with the ACL moving forward? That's a whole debate. I'd presume that we will get clarification from McAdoo one way or another later this week. But for now, he's clarified that just the cheek cut is the issue coming from Detroit. But Detroit, not so keen or kind to McAdoo based on recent history.
It's 2-0. Yeah, I heard a comment. I think they're going to have a little team meeting and figure it out, but I wouldn't be 100% shocked if we get a Cameron sets out to get his go ahead and get it fixed probably after this.
Yeah, there's nothing to gain for him now, is there?
Especially like the knee, and I don't know enough about what he's personally feeling. ACLs are different for everybody. There's a part of you, it's like, yeah, it's probably a little more manageable in Supercross than trying to slog out a whole summer beating it to death. So if you're already out of Supercross, why just keep beating it to death to get to outdoors this year? And when do you eventually have it fixed? If you do it at the end of outdoors, and you're screwed for next year anyways. And he has a contract for next season, so get it done and get back whenever you can this year and get ready for next year.
Just a couple more things on Max before we move on. I'm interested to see what he does with this moving forward, because essentially there are 2 choices. One, you leave Detroit and you say, I won the race. I don't care what the results said or who saw the checkered flag first. I know I was the best guy. I know that was my win. This is brilliant. Off we go. Or you dwell on it. You kind of think, that was really unfair. I'm not happy with that. And then you kind of let it ruin your psyche moving forward. Now, I presume he'll do the latter, but that is fascinating to me to some degree. And secondly, we know how capable Max is in Supercross. He's a proven race winner. But my main question coming into this season was, can he straight up run with, beat RJ and Levi? I had no questions about him beating McAdoo, Vial, or essentially anyone in East Coast from last year. But RJ and Levi are arguably the cream of the crop in MX2 in 250SX at the moment. So and especially after the heat race, to watch Max ride away from Levi, I was really quite surprised, and it was really quite a statement in my eyes because truthfully, I didn't expect him to be able to do that. So yeah, despite the ending, a powerful showing, a powerful result. But sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, and to that point, what he commented on the podium, and even Levi did as well, as Levi beat him with a 3-lap run, but even Max said he knows Levi can sprint. Like, in a sense, like Levi 1-lap speed is pretty high when he wants to, similar as an RJ, but Max is still, in the moment, at least what he's proved across the mains and the heats, is a better full run main event guy. So I think there's a lot of positive for him to take away from that. Like, Levi's good for 2 or 3 laps, but over the course of putting it together 4, 5, 6 times, Max has proven to be stronger so far.
Okay, so I was going to move on from Max, but you just reminded me by saying podium interview. So,
the Bobby thing. So good.
Unexpected, because if there's one man who is overly polished on the podium and plays the Disney character well, it's Max Anstie. So unexpected to come from him. It was 100% truthful. It was not fun between friends. It was not poking the bear. It was aggressive. But once he got back to the truck, calmed down, 5-10 minutes, say, he called Bobby just to get ahead of it because there were people in the inner circle concerned about what would happen. And Bobby was fine with it and essentially said, I'm glad I fired you up. I'm glad that I could do this and carry you to a good result. This is brilliant. This is the best thing I've ever heard. Which, to be fair, from what the little we all know about Bobby, I feel like just for him to get such a shout out on the podium would be enough to just drive him and think this is amazing, no matter what that shout out is packaged as.
From talking to Bobby a few times more prior to the race, it's very on brand for him. He would be, like I said, when I saw Max's face, there was a split second. I'm like, I was thinking just dry, your guys' dry British sarcastic humor, and I'm like, about halfway through him saying, I'm like, oh, he's dead serious. But then I was still laughing at the end of it because I was like, I don't think it's even going to bother Bobby. I think he's going to think this is more funny than anything. I can't remember if I was texting you. I was texting just full caps like, this is hilarious, because I knew it wasn't going to be that big of a deal. I
was checking his contract to see what it said about podium interviews. No, but yeah, I understand. He explains it all in our interview, so watch that on YouTube or listen to it on podcast platforms. He explains what happened with Bobby after the fact, but it is fine. He is not fired. There is no repercussions of this. Everyone's moving on.
Contract for next year is still valid. We're okay.
And honestly, if anything, I think it might have brought Bobby and Max closer, because I don't think that there was much of a Bobby and Max relationship prior to this. So I think now there is a relationship there, which is positive. But
maybe this will turn into a thing. Do we get a weekly Max shout out to Bobby in some smart ass form on the podium each week? Maybe
I would almost like to go around to all of it, like Mitch, Lars, etc., and be like, so if Max rode for your team and said this, what's the outcome at your team? Because I said to Max, I was like, this could have gone very differently and would have done in a different scenario. So I'd be curious to know what each team, I mean, because they're not in the moment, they would probably just go, oh, it's fine, riders will say whatever. But I feel like some teams would definitely take a more proactive approach. Anyway, Levi Kitchen, moving on to him, and actually, first and foremost, Fox Racing's first win of 2025, thanks to Levi Kitchen, who became we now have essentially 11 winners in 12 main events. And most surprising, 6 manufacturers have won a main event in the first 6 rounds, which is mental. Because I guarantee, and I probably will look at this if I can be bothered, I don't know if we've had 6 manufacturers win in a season in the last, maybe since the sport was created. And to have it in 6 rounds?
Yeah.
I mean, Kawasaki...
Who are we missing? Gas, and Suzuki at this point?
Yeah, and Beta.
And Beta.
And Ducati.
Well, Ducati's not racing.
Yeah, but you never know. Don't rule anything out.
Red bud.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing to me. 6 different manufacturers. I don't believe... I will look into it, but I don't believe that's really the norm. But congratulations to Fox Racing on their first win of 2025, which with a rich heritage and deep racing DNA, Fox Racing has been at the forefront of motocross for 50 years. They empower the world's best athletes like Jorge Prado, Ken Roczen, Levi Kitchen and Joe Shimoda to chase their dreams. With their gear, dreamers become champions. They honour the past while inventing tomorrow, pushing the limits of racewear and protection, because at Fox... change is the only constant. Shop their new elevated future limited edition collection by visiting www.foxracing.com. The one thing I have to say about Levi, 2 things. As time goes on, we will forget about the red flag fiasco, and he effectively had a perfect day. So this was, all in all, despite the rough around the edges packaging of it all, an incredible rebound for Levi. He's now only 9 points down, which honestly surprised me. I didn't expect him to jump that close. Also, a little bit of a heartbreaker, this whole deal. If Max had won, he would have had a 15-point lead over Levi. That's quite a swing. But we'll see what this championship comes down to. So yeah, massive rebound for Levi. And the one moment of his main event that stood out to me is after he and Max did the little cat and mouse game, in the turn before you rejoin at the first corner, Levi went around the outside of Max, and from the TV angle, it looks like there is zero room there at all. Very impressed that he found room, because I watched it many, many times, and I cannot see how he fit through whatever gap was there. So that will live with me forever. That's very impressive.
So here comes the clincher based off last week's conversation. We kind of wrote Levi off a little bit. Last week's pod, it was not... you brought it up. And I did agree with you that we thought, not looking good. How bad is the back pedal now?
I don't think. I would say this about 250 East first. Deepest coast ever. Very exciting. We've had 4 winners in 250 West. I don't think we get 4 winners in East. I think this is a Max RJ Kitchen show. And I think that is it moving forward.
So after last week being high on Tom can race this championship, going back and forth with Max a little bit as you kept changing opinion. But so you're riding off Tom on a win on this?
Nope. Because as I said last week, I could see him winning the championship without a main event win.
I thought you said with just one. That's
well,
true.
Even that's the same. That's splitting hairs. I can still see Tom being in that, but as far as like taking this thing by the reins, and not to rehash what I said last week, VL needs an open door. If the door doesn't open, he won't be able to capitalize. That is all relevant. But as far as the show, I think this is a Max RJ Kitchen show. And I don't know. Yeah, okay, we were all quite down on Kitchen, but I mean, if you want to be really objective, what I said about the main event in favor of Max, I'm really surprised that Kitchen couldn't hang with Max, especially after that heat race. Like, I am surprised by that. That confused me, because I would have said, at worst, I would have said the gap between the two of them will stay the same. I certainly didn't have it on my bingo card that Max was going to pull away. So I don't know if you want to factor that in negatively or whatever you want to do. I mean, as I said, I think RJ Kitchen and Max are the heavy hitters in this championship, with Tom just lurking and ready to capitalize if an opportunity arises. But yeah, 9 points. Levi is certainly back in this. I just still don't know how much I want to... Like, there is a world where after Detroit you can say he's the championship favourite, and I just don't know if I want to go there or I want to go in the opposite direction, or it's maybe still a little bit confusing.
I think what still stands out to me, it's looking maybe a little too far ahead, but it's going to get here sooner than we realize, is the fact that our first East-West shootout is so early this season. We only have one more traditional East round, Daytona, before we get to Indy. Because next weekend's Arlington, we're back to West for 1 week, then we go Daytona East for 1 week, and then Indy, we're on our first East-West. I want to see if that throws... On one hand, I say I want to see if it throws a wrench in it, but... I don't know. Like, yeah, it's kind of is a Levi, Max, RJ trio stronger than a Jordan, Hayden, what do we say, Dave? What are we labeling with that? Goes Davies trio?
I think that's discrediting Jordan.
I said Jordan, didn't I?
Jordan,
know. Hayden.
Well, that means you left out Juju then.
Juju, sorry. Juju.
Either way, you left out someone who should have been included.
To figure out, well, as you can see, I'm very much guessing myself. I'm trying to figure who I left out. Sorry. Juju, Hayden, Jordan trio versus Levi, Max, RJ. Will an East-West shootout play that early into the season play much into this, or are we confident that there's going to be some separation here?
Fair to say that I would back Max, Kitchen, and RJ to start up front more so than I would the others. I feel like 2 races, so what really is it? Mainly Max, but I feel like I've seen more consistency out of the gate in the East riders than I have in the West.
Yeah.
Because apart from Davies, West has been quite hit and miss for starts.
Yeah. I am really curious seeing how consistent Max's starts have been. Nate's have been a lot better. Just the whole start East Coast team in general has had, we lost a couple this week, but between round 1 and 2, we had a lot more consistency with their East Coast guys. I want to see if that's down to material or if they actually figured out something that's going to help Hayden and Cole a little more when they come back around, because we went from one end of the spectrum where the star guys couldn't buy themselves hardly a start to they're up front consistently again.
But are they up front consistently, or is it just Max?
Or the rider. That's Nate's been, I think, super consistent. And then last week, we lost
consistent,
guys.
But like top 6 starts consistently. I don't think last week, yes, Pearson, Dax were.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm recency biased, only thinking about Detroit.
What was Nate's heat race start?
Are we counting heat races?
I think also, anytime a gate drops, just consistently.
Speaking of heat races, to circle back, the people who were commenting, well, Pierce got screwed with a red flag last week and Max took advantage. It was a heat race, guys. It was a heat race. Like, let's calm it down on that. Like, it was a heat race. That's
talking about practice here.
Like, honestly,
heat race.
When I first started reading those comments, I was like, how are they counting Pierce's main event crash as like Pierce getting screwed by a red flag? Like, how does that work? And then after about 20 minutes,
count him being his own red flag as getting screwed.
And then after about 20 minutes, I was like, oh, they're talking about the heat race of all races. Like, yeah. Anyway, moving on to RJ, much better. He said that he's struggling with bike setup quite a lot at the moment, mainly because of lack of bike time in the off season. He said that he was very close to just throwing everything out and going back to 2024 settings this week, but made a late call to not do that. He will test this week, and then whatever he comes up with, he will stick with and ride it out, because I think they're kind of searching too much when they're in the middle of a championship fight.
Did he finally switch frames? Because I believe last year, correct me if I'm wrong, he was like Tom. He's stuck on the non-windowed frame, which I'm guessing this year, did he stick it out on the old frame again, or did he move to the new one finally? And that's why he's I gotta look at the next round. I'll look at our not Arlington. I won't know until Daytona.
Oh yeah, of course. But yeah, RJ was much better. Still, maybe not. No, because you can't forget, and people are gonna forget that he made that mistake coming across the start straight early in the main event. So he probably, I think pre-red flag, he was better than Levi in that main event.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we're all going to forget what happened and how it all played out, and we're all going to... Eventually, it will just be Levi won the race. But actually, when you break it down, I think in order of effectiveness in the main event, it was Max, RJ, Levi. So, do with that what you will. We really need to get on here, but just scrolling through the 250 results. Vial was happier, but kind of exactly how I described Vial. Sat there, lurking. If an opportunity opened up, he would have taken it, but that didn't happen, so there was nothing for him to take. Thrasher was 5th with a broken finger sustained on Tuesday. Very impressive. It was really up in the air if he was going to race. I honestly did not think he would. So for him to win a heat and finish top 5 in the main event is crazy impressive. He had surgery today because riding with a broken finger essentially shattered it, and he can't move it. So he had surgery to fix it, but the way the schedule falls, he shouldn't miss any races and will be back in Daytona. So that's good.
Yeah, if you want to see, because at first you hear the word broken finger, like Joe, these guys, like everybody kind of does it. A rock breaks it. Go look at the X-ray for anybody that's wondering how bad Nate's finger was. It's so displaced. Was it his middle finger or ring finger? I think it's his middle.
I don't know.
either way, more towards inside grip, and it is completely displaced and shattered and basically stuck like this and swollen up huge. Like, I get it looking like, oh, that can't be fun, especially where it is in the more towards the palm part of the finger. Like they're talking about, he commented that like harsh landings hurt really bad. I'm sure because literally the whole thing was just shifting around the whole time. That kind of felt good.
I honestly did not notice Chance Hymas at all.
Fairly quiet night for Chance. He actually went heat or main. One of them he went backwards a little bit, but he got passed by Austin, but then he repassed Austin, and then somebody in their group cartwheeled. But yeah, he had a little bit of a quiet main.
Faulkner had a quiet-ish main, but that's good because Tampa wasn't great. Detroit was trending in a bad direction, and he got a result on the board. It's a base to build off of, etc., etc., etc. All of that's good, I think.
Do you feel like the Jordan winning right before East Coast started, and just like what, of course, Austin has done in the past, do you think maybe there was a little, what's the word, like we didn't give enough credit for what he went through last year and stuff, just because you kind of look at the results? I've seen some people say, man, he's underwhelming so far. I haven't seen people like go full crazy sass, but if you've been like, I was expecting a little more, but would you say that overall maybe people were expecting a little too much?
Is that not because last year he came out on round one though? Like, so the proof is in the pudding, and we all have seen Faulkner bounce back, so we just round kind of expect
Jordan
him to.
Jordan wins right before we get to this coast, so I definitely said, like, I was thinking top 5 at a podium guy, so it's been a little under what I thought, but in the same breath I took a step back and was like, is what it is. Like, no panic button.
Yeah, I'm happy to throw out all expectations, and just as long as he keeps building and doesn't decline at all, then I think it's just fine. Got to remember, this is the deeper coast as well, so that factors in for sure. And in a deeper coast, I don't know if I would say biggest surprise, I don't know if I would say most impressive, but Carson Mumford gets some kind of award from me for shining and making me once again believe that in the right situation, with the right prep, with the right work, with the right effort, he could maybe make something of this yet. Okay? And
it's kind of the same, and it's not bad. Carson's talented, great starts. Doesn't hang in there. I don't know what the circumstances are this year.
Okay. Well,
I haven't talked to him.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay, brilliant. Cullen Park was 7th or 8th.
Yeah, before the red flag, he was 8th. He was, I think, 7th.
Well,
before the red flag.
And after the red flag, because Faulkner cleaned him out on the last lap, I believe. Kind of payback for Tampa. There's a video circulating of Faulkner and Park getting into it big time after the race, so you can imagine the move wasn't the cleanest. But similar to what I said to Mumford, Park is shining. And once again, I don't know if the answer is put Park on a 450. I don't know if the answer is make a serious run at a 250 career. I don't know if the answer is just give Park Jet Lawrence's bike. I don't know what the answer is, but there is an answer out there, and I think we all need to get together and figure out what's best for Cullen Park moving forward, because I do believe there's talent there. I just don't know if a satellite 250 for that giant of a man is the way forward.
I was actually talking to their team the other day, and this is very far out, but I was joking with him that next year I think Cullen would be a great candidate for 250 West and then 450 Olive East. I would love to see him get a shot on a 450 and see where it goes.
Do you think with his size, maybe he's not the flashiest rider? Is there any way that any top team looks at him, recognizes what he's doing, anything? Obviously, yes, the outdoor results aren't going to help. But that aside,
I think it's getting closer. I think the tough ones, like I said, outdoors, the results are not there, and he's rode a 450 outdoors. And he's just not an outdoor guy. I'm just gonna put it bluntly. Indoors, it's getting close. But it still takes, like, as you know, even because on one hand you could be like, oh, well, what if he was on a star bike? What if he was on this? Well, Malcolm Stewart won a 250 title, 220 pounds. Like, a decent bike in Supercross is a decent bike. I still think he has to chip basically a top 5 for somebody above a Phoenix to maybe look at him.
Is he not chipping at a top 5 already, though? Like, it's effectively 7-7.
Legitimately, no. We're talking about a top 5. Like, legitimately has to get a fifth.
You said chipping at a top 5.
Top 5. Has to be top 5.
Just want
to get a top 5. That's what I said. I don't know, really, though, his style. Like, I've never seen him ride a 450 on Supercross, so that's where I'd be super curious with a team that's been behind him long enough is like, hey, maybe swap. We don't see a lot of that anymore, 250 guys riding opposite coast, but if it was pre-planned well enough, like they put a lot of development in their bike with Ferrandis, I would definitely champion for Cullen to ride 250 on one coast and 450 on the other and just see, does one stand out to the other? Do you get a clear answer of where he should be going forward?
Let's jump to 450s. It's time, which was won by Monster Energy Yamaha Star Racing's Cooper Webb, putting Yamaha Motor USA on top of the podium, just as we are doing in this podcast. They're on top of our podium every single week for being great supporters of what we do. But just the industry as a whole, everywhere you look, Yamaha is innovating, elevating, and doing all they can to put back into the industry. And I think that maybe, just maybe, Yamaha don't get enough credit for that. So I'm here to say, let's start giving Yamaha more credit. And we are certainly very thankful for their support of this podcast.
It's my freedom. It's my fix. It's the endless pursuit of trying to find that flow.
So Webb finally got a win. It was always going to happen. It's not a surprise that Webb got a win. It's merely ticking a box. But it came at a crucial time. It came in a fashion that Webb relishes. Close one eye, it may as well have been 2021. Which is weird that actually after all this time, we're still having Webb versus Roczen. There's something to that. I actually want to dig into that a little bit because I feel like, not now, we're running out of time, we need to move. But I do want to dig into that at some point because I feel like the sport always has evolved quite quickly, but this time, or not this time, but in recent memory, I feel like we're just replaying the same greatest hits more often than in the past. Like even look at MXGP. I was thinking this earlier. This year, it will be Tim Geiser versus Roman Federer for the championship, which is what it was in 2016. Like, and then you've got the Webb versus Roczen thing, which is what it was in 2019, 2020, like, I don't know. Is there something? I don't know if there's something to that, but anyway, answers on a postcard. We'll get into it at some point when I have more of a theory behind it. But how dangerous is Cooper Webb at this point? Is this... okay, let me say this. Is he your championship favourite? Tied on points now with Chase Sexton, but is he... Do you put him as the clear guy?
No, but if we're narrowing the window, like, because I think there's multiple ways to what would you call percentage pie this. If you're giving me Cooper Chase, I'm 60-40. 60% Chase, 40% Coop. So I'm not Coop favorite. I'm not tied. I'm ever so slight Chase. But yes, of course, Coop is dangerous. And like we said, even after, the slew of injuries going into Tampa, like we kind of said, like, hey, this has got to be, if Coop wants to be in this, he's got to be doing the whole Filippo hand thing. Like, it's time to step up. It didn't happen last weekend, but it did this weekend. Like, it needs rides like that because you look at what should have been on paper based off the first lap, an absolutely terrible night for Chase to come back to third, which with what's left in the field, that's going to keep happening. Even if you're Coop, if you're banking off a couple bad nights for Chase, if he's going to keep getting back to third or second, we have to have wins. We have to have wins.
Yeah, I almost wonder if the depleted field, and it's not so bad as everyone's making out, but I do wonder if the depleted field makes Webb's superpower less effective because, as you say, harder to capitalize on Chase crashing because Chase can just pass a lot of guys. So I don't know if maybe the window in which Webb operates is smaller because of the lack of competition. I don't know. Because effectively it is much more of a head-to-head duel.
Especially, you say not depleted, and I get what you mean. I think the striking thing is just how early we are into the season having this conversation. We're going into round 6. This feels like the story I would see play out at round 10 or 11 or 12, kind of. So when you look at the fact that we still have 11 races, correct me if I'm wrong, left, how many do you think Coop needs to win this title? If heads up, yeah, Chase is going to have some ups and downs, but say nothing else happens injury-wise, what's the most wins that Coop's had in a season he's won? Because I feel like with this many to go, with a bit of a depleted field in a sense where Chase should be able to come through no matter what all the time, I look at this on paper and go, man, I think Coop has to win 4 or 5 more mains to probably bring home this championship against Chase.
What do you think the most wins that Webb's had in a season is?
4 or 5 would be my guess for his 450 titles, but you're not going to shock me if you tell me I'm way off and it's like 8 or 9.
You have played into my hands perfectly, because who can forget
Here we go.
the story that I wrote in the off-season where I said, and who can forget, obviously you were an avid reader, where I said, yes, Webb deserves a lot of credit for his craftiness, etc., but we all overlook the fact that Webb can just win races straight up and be the fastest guy, a la 2021 when he won the title with 8 wins.
8 wins. What'd I say? I said it wouldn't shock me if you said 8.
And 2019, his first title was 7. So he can do that. Like, there does seem to be, and I think it's because so much props and emphasis go to his craftiness that the rest of his playbook is just overlooked, but he can do that. Now, Chase is the fastest rider in this series. I think that's not even debatable.
Not really.
No. So Webb is not as fast as Chase, but Webb is plenty fast enough to go with Chase straight up, win races straight up, etc., etc., etc. It's not that Webb has to only rely on. It's not like Webb is Vial, as I was describing in the 250 class, which I do think that his playbook is overstated from time to time.
And that's what I'm saying, like this, when we talk about wins across the season, I'm not sitting here going, oh, he's only going to get 5 or 6 more if he's waiting on these bad nights from Chase. He's going to beat, and the hard part's straight up, Chase hit a gate and fell first lap. Is what it is. It's racing. Coop won heads up. But if you're looking as heads up in the sense of him and Chase starting within a couple spots of each other, yes, like you said, Coop will win races, quote unquote, heads up this year. Compared to when I say that number of wins, though, I think of it like if you look at a season where it's Chase, Jet, Eli, Coop, by example, going for the title, you would think if Coop were to make it happen, it's like, okay, he could probably win that championship on 4 wins or something because there's so much parity between 4 guys. When it comes down to him and Chase, well, the number you said, so to match his 2 title years, he's got to rack up another 6 or 7 wins realistically across the next 11 races. So more than a 50% win ratio against Chase. Who are saying is faster. What do you think of those odds?
Yeah, but that's not in an ideal situation that's needed, but that's kind of like presuming it is just head to head. Someone's going to make a mistake, someone's going to have a bike problem, someone's going to bend a lever, something's going to happen that means that it's not that straight up. Now, of course, if it is going to be head-to-head like that, then I say Chase has the upper hand.
But that's what I'm saying. So are you saying, when we say they're going to race for this heads up, are you picturing a Cooper Webb championship out of this? You kind of based on what you said, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Is it going to rely on a bad night? Is it how much faith do you have in him? If true heads up, no real bad nights the rest of the year, except maybe what we see Chase, maybe one of them goes down first lap and comes back to 3rd or something like that. But no like 10th places, no DNFs, nothing crazy the rest of the season.
That's not what I'm saying, but I guess it kind of is what I'm saying by default. I guess it has to. I guess it, even though that's not what I'm saying, I guess in a roundabout way that has to be what I'm saying, because if you say Chase is the fastest rider, then that somewhere down the road leads to that line of thinking.
Like I said, I'm just going off win ratio off 11 races between the two. Like I said, if we're looking at a Webb taking this title, does your default answer, like I said, not that we're saying, like we're not saying you're going, oh, Webb has to have something happen, but does it give you that little bit of gut feeling ahead of one-on-one against Chase that there's got to be a little extra something into it? Or are you saying that, 100% Webb can win this just straight up week in and week out with the two of them going toe-to-toe?
Yes, Webb 100% can win it straight up. Yep. But in that situation, Chase is most likely.
Yeah.
But Webb certainly can, and it's not as open and shut as if it's 100% straight up, Chase wins. There you go. That's kind of what I was getting
situation. To is we say, like, we kind of dance around it. Like, we are saying that Webb is good enough to legitimately go head to head with Chase for this championship. You do lean towards a little bit of like, hey, if you're going off odds, like head to head, we're probably going to give Chase a little bit higher chance. But we are saying Webb can do it, but we're also playing off, hey, something could happen.
Yeah.
It feels like something more likely. And again, we're just going off basically past, just stats. Like, something more likely could happen to Chase in a title run, a DNF, a crash night or something than Webb. Chase is more likely to win on raw speed. But we're saying anything could happen. These guys are going to go head to head, toe to toe. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So you said that you would go Chase 60, Webb 40. So
Yes.
you're 0 on Roczen?
No. I was saying,
Okay.
sorry. I said, depending how you blame pie, I said, if you're only looking at Webb and Chase, if those are the only two we're asking percentages, that's my percentage split. Yes, I think you cannot count out Roczen. Yes, he has a chance. If you make me split all of them, I give some math where I take, basically take 5% away from the other two and give Kenny 10, maybe 15 at most. I'd say 10 right now.
That is sensible. But there is a thing inside of me that says, based solely on what I have seen in 2025, I have no reason to doubt Kenny yet. Now, I don't know what I do with that,
No,
but that's inside me.
The thing I love, and you probably noticed this, between just the posts on social media, whether I'm talking about, or the comments, whether we're talking about comments from Larry, from Kenny, from Pipes, the way they're posting, the way they're talking, like, I definitely feel this feeling from the team that they believe they're in this championship hunt and they are going to go the distance. Like, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if I've ever felt that from that whole organization in the 2 years prior that he's been there. That, yes, of course they believe Kenny's that caliber of rider. They believe they hired a guy that could race for a championship, but I think they were racing more for race wins, where just the comments at bad nights, like, we've got this. So just the little things I pick up, like, this team really believes they can get this done. And there's a lot of faith there right now that they can go the distance and be in this thing till the end.
I also think that a sense of comfort comes from this for Kenny, that him and Chase are so close, they've been around each other so much, that I almost feel like Kenny is not intimidated by Chase, because Kenny feels like he knows Chase well enough to kind of know where the weaknesses are and know where the strengths are and almost know how to beat him. Now, Webb, of course, there is a history there. That's not the same situation. But I think that helps Kenny's belief, eagerness for this championship, the fact that one of the two competitors is a friendly face. Whereas if it was Cooper and Eli, both are kind of foreign entities and you don't really know. But like, I'm sure that somewhere behind closed doors, he's kind of had a discussion where he's like, well, I know Chase and X, Y, and Z. And if I do X, Y, and Z, that has to factor into it somewhere. It is bizarre. I said this to someone yesterday. Chase has won twice this season. Still the only repeat winner, which is crazy. And also, okay, unlikely, but it's not out of the question that our winners in Arlington are Davies and Roczen. Now, I'm not putting money on that, but there is a chance that we go past round 7 with Chase still being the only repeat winner in either class. Let us dream.
Yeah, it is 100% possible. And to back that, I'm not putting all the emphasis on Arlington. I guess, and I'm not trying to put doubt on Kenny because Daytona is the round after. Do you feel like Kenny has to win? Like, Arlington needs to kind of get it done? Because I don't know why. Shoot me if I'm so far off on my theory here. Like, I kind of think of, we get to Daytona. I'm like, Daytona it feels more Chase or Cooper-esque, mostly Chase at this point, I feel like. So if we don't get a Kenny win Arlington, are we waiting till Indy? Are we waiting till, later than that?
Well, Kenny is great in Arlington and great in Indy. Indy is maybe more so than Arlington, but both of those are definitely Kenny venues. Remember a couple of podcasts ago, I said that if you look at Kenny's career statistics, there is a clear line in the sand that pre-round 8 is great and post-round 8 is a drop-off. Daytona is round 8, so that plays into your theory perfectly.
So in what I say, though, so if he wins at Arlington, do you still just based, again, I'm stats, trending, history is big to me. Do you still, even if he wins at Arlington, you're like, I still got to wait till we get past round 8 to answer the question if Kenny's going to be in this the long haul. Like, regardless he wins at Arlington, it could, based on, again, prior history, it still could go south after Daytona and trend off.
No, I need to wait until we go past round 14 until I say that Kenny is in this for the long haul. Round 8 is too early for me.
Like we're 3 from the end, and then you'll put a stamp on it.
I am very, very fluid with Kenny at the moment. Having a good time. We'll go week to week. Still in it. Brilliant. Still in it. Brilliant. We are making no assumptions. We're not jumping ahead. Round 14, we'll commit. But as personally, I'm just like, Kenny's still in it? Brilliant. The longer we can have Kenny in it, the better, and long may it continue. I really do sincerely hope that this does turn out to be the terrific trio, because Kenny will add so much to this title fight, and I think he already is. Although he's not nipping at the heels, he's in the picture, and I think his presence is adding a lot. So fingers crossed that this does continue.
Let me ask you a stats question, because I don't, no clue. I could be so far off on this. Let's go theoretics. Let's say Kenny wins this championship. Does that make Kenny the oldest first-time 450 Supercross champion? Because his other two 450 titles are Pro Motocross.
It must do. I mean, I don't know the ages
right?
in the 70s. I haven't got that on the top of my head, but
yeah,
it would most likely, yes. Especially first time.
Yeah. Season of feel-good stories if it happened. It would be insane if he does it. Absolutely insane.
But what I was going at before we went down the rabbit hole, crazy. Chase is the only repeat winner this year, but his best rides, far and away, have come from San Diego, starting from last, and, in my opinion, Detroit, starting from last. And now if you factor in Hangtown last year, there's clearly some sort of gamer aspect to Chase that when the back is up against the wall, he can uncork something special. Almost Hurlings-esque, you know? Hurlings has that in him as well. Don't know what that is, but he is on press day in Arlington, so everyone who was dismayed by our press day video in Detroit, we have Chase, so we're trending in a much better direction already, and we only have one name. That will be my question. Like, what is that, and how do we bring that out regularly? And also, if Webb is there, my question to Webb that I want to know is the shooty gun Webb. Is that immature Webb and he's gone away, or is he coming out soon? Just want to know. Just purely curious. Have we put him in the past, and do we kind of cringe when we think of shooty gun Webb, or is he coming? Just want to know.
Shooty gun.
Yeah, I don't know. I just want to know. Just want to know if I should expect his arrival at some point.
God, if somebody in Webb's camp listens to this, can you please make him run a butt patch that says "shooty gun"?
I don't know if that's allowed. I think that might even violate a law. I don't know.
We can just do like the emoji on Apple. Could be like a squirt gun or something. Shooty squirt gun. I don't know.
Yeah, but genuinely curious. I could understand it if he went, no, I'm not that guy anymore. I mean, I think he is. But yeah, is that coming? Because it would have. I mean, if he'd done that to Roczen, that would have been harsh.
That would have been complete mental repeat.
From memory, I think the last time we saw Shooty Gun Webb was the Seattle Heat Race in 2023 with Chase. In fact, I don't think we've seen it since. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, Chase's best rides of the season have come from last rides. Bizarre. He hit the gate. There's a lot of criticism for this, but everyone hits the gate. I think if you watch, I think Plessinger flinches first, maybe, but I don't know. But
actually, the funny one is if you go back and watch the photos, the person who scored off it is I'd have to ask him. Anderson, in my opinion, reacts to Chase going and hitting the gate and ends up timing it perfect. Like Anderson over the gate is like half a bike length on anybody.
I feel like Anderson was very, 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 very close to hitting the gate. He got very lucky. But the criticism is out of hand. Like, riders hit the gate, and even like second turn hits the back wheel of a rider. Like,
That actually made me go, like, you hit a gate, it is what it is. The run into the guy in the
No, but like, you know, like,
that was
like you hit the gate, you're flustered, you're trying to make moves, and then you run into someone's back wheel. Like, I don't know, I don't see the big deal here. Like, I just don't.
I will say, halfway through that main, watching him come through the pack, I did immediately. Actually, it was when he passed Malcolm going through the whoops after Malcolm passed him, was a second bear in the whoop last swing. And I watched that and I was like, getting ready to sit down with Lewis and have him explain to me how this is the greatest Chase Sexton ride he's ever seen.
One off? No. No,
maybe
I'm crazy.
It was great, though.
And actually...
It was, like, solid.
This is 100% truthful. Chase passed 20 riders. Every single one of them, all 20, messaged me today. All of them. All 20. And said... You know what? As Chase went by me, I couldn't help but admire his Decal Works graphics. And I was like, really? Tell me more. And they went, they said, Lewis, I don't even know why I'm messaging you this. Do you work for Decal Works? And I said, no, I don't. But I appreciate you coming to me. They see me as like the town square of Supercross, I guess.
Decal Works. All this walking around the pits you've been doing.
Really surprising to have Jason Anderson reach out to me with this information. Like, who would have thought? Yeah. Hey, Lewis. Guess what stood out to me when Chase rode past me? And then at this point, I'm like, well, it could be one of 20 things. Let me give you my list that stands out to me every single time Chase Sexton walks past me. And it was none of those. They all said they just could not believe how amazing the Decal Works graphics that Chase is running are. And then they said, Lewis, you don't work for Decal Works, do you? They clarified that twice. Very weird. Don't know. They obviously didn't get it the first time. And I said, no, once again, I don't. And they went, damn. Where do I buy some? And I said, well, I can give you that information despite not working for Decal Works. You want to go to decalmx.com, Jason, Justin, Aaron, Malcolm, and others. And they all said thanks. And we all moved on with our days. So, Decal Works.
We need to add a ticker tape that says add in progress.
What? What?
That might be one of the best ones yet.
Yeah, really, just who would have thought that all 20 riders would text me that today? You just wouldn't... You'd almost say that if you didn't think of me as such a trustworthy member of society, you'd say I was lying. Like, it's that unbelievable.
Back to the pod, did Malcolm Stewart text you about getting passed in the whoops after passing Chase Sexton in the whoops?
Well, actually, first of all, if I don't get an award for that Decal Works read, and Decal Works have the ability to make awards, I know this, I've seen it. So, just FYI. Chase also said after the race that was the best he has ever been in the whoops on a 450. This, really? Like, I at no point have I ever looked at Chase in the whoops on a 450 and gone, that could be better. But apparently this was the best ever? Like, that caught me off guard massively. And if I'd interviewed him after the race, which sadly I didn't, we would have gotten to the bottom of this. But alas.
Alas.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, because are you with me? Honda, even last year with the KTM struggles, at no point did I go, if only Chase could figure out his whoops.
Where it was okay, but compared to, say, Webb or Dungier, where a lot of people would comment, the Austrian bikes aren't as good in the whoops. Like, yeah, I'd see a couple racers. I'm like, Chase could be a little better there, but never like, he's not good in the whoops. He's just not good.
Well, he clarified even the Honda days since I got onto a 450. So... I don't. Chase very high on his whoop speed.
What did he do? Steal Malcolm's shock after last weekend?
Well, it is quite funny to see Chase blow by Malcolm in the whoops after the tail of last weekend, which kind of goes with the trend of what I was saying last week of why that played out the way it did. I think. But anyway,
I was going to say that with Malcolm. I thought it was kind of interesting watching his main because, like, I'm looking down the order at Aaron. Aaron gets his first win last year, and I felt like everybody similar to Malcolm just. One of the most elated I've seen the industry, the crowd, everybody for a guy to finally win. But I felt like after Aaron won, nobody really was like, that's it. Aaron's going on a winning streak. Aaron's the guy, like that level of guy now. It was like, yeah, he could, he's proven he can do it. And not saying there was a lot of this. I was surprised at at least that I physically saw, the amount of Malcolm comments I saw. I feel like, that's it. He's in this title hunt. He's going to get more wins and race wins this year. And not to say I disagreed, but I still kind of picture like this. I like, okay, the type of ride he had was just so unique and out of nowhere. So I'm like, okay, can he really repeat that kind of pace to come from 10th to pass Webb, to pass Kenny, to pass all these guys. And don't get me wrong, 4th place. Like, I think Malcolm is still riding some of the best we've seen him. But it definitely doesn't just magically happen after your first win.
Well, he was definitely spicier early in the day in practice, and I was like, oh, this has really created a monster. Here we go. And then as the day played out, I felt like it really fizzled out, and now we're just back to where we were pre-Tampa, which is, I mean, maybe not. But
I think we're a little better than pre-Tampa, but like you said, not we're not carrying Tampa level main pace or intensity.
Yeah, and although you could say, as we said last week, Tampa was his first top 5 since the end of 2022, so he's in the top 5 again, so that's great. But with the depleted field, with Anderson's issues, I'm not celebrating the 4th place like it's this massive. Like, that is when, good or bad, that is 4 to 6 in this field is where Malcolm should be.
Well, and how big was our gap to like the top 2 runners that he was behind? I mean, Chase came from it. It was him to Roczen and Webb was like 23 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely.
Which, like I said, a 4th. If the 4th was 10 seconds off that group, 8 seconds, I would be like, okay, we have a lot of our Tampa pace. Where right now, I'm like, it's still better than where we were pre-Tampa, but it's not. We didn't carry as much of it as I was hoping.
I looked away from Jason Anderson late in the race and presumed he had fallen because I looked back up and he was wherever he was, quite far back. Wait, I don't think he did.
Oh, yeah, no, they showed the replay. He crashed.
Okay, well, I didn't see this, but I just got the Cowie PR, and all it says...
He died on a triple.
Well, okay, well, the Cowie PR, all his quote says is blah, 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 blah. As the race went on, I just lost some steam. I made a mistake in a rhythm section, and that set me back. So that, to me, doesn't say crash, but he could crash.
Yeah, the mistake, the 3 out of the right-hand corner, that the guys would go 3 single and then left, or like Webb was going double and cut down. He went to 3 in the 1 lap and just absolutely lost. He actually got away from it clean. It looked like it could have been pretty bad.
Well, file this under the category that I've been beating so far this year of missed opportunity for Jason Anderson, because when Chase, one of the primary contenders, is at the back and you're starting up front, this is your time.
Yep.
So I don't know. I'm kind of losing more and more faith as time goes on. Another quick note before we get to an overarching question. Justin Cooper posted on Instagram earlier a couple of good races in a row for me. And cue me, like the blinking man meme, like, excuse me? So, good couple of races for Justin Cooper. Good for him. Glad he's happy. Because I did not have that on my bingo card. But Malcolm broke out in Tampa in this somewhat depleted field, not as bad as everyone is saying. Everyone's losing their minds. But Malcolm broke through last week, made a statement. Justin Barsha, Justin Cooper, Aaron Plessinger, Dylan Ferrandis, and others. Who's the next to stand out? Who's the next? Who will jump out and capitalize on this situation? If anyone.
It's kind of a weird one to say because Anderson and Cooper have been closer. Like, there's almost
Anderson's not in this group.
Okay, there's a part of me that wants to scream Barsha.
So do I. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because, like, Barsha's been around so long, so I, like, still believe because I've seen so much. But I still have faith.
I think part of it is the attitude. I see again this week in a man who just looks like you keep saying a lot on his mind. Almost after every race, I see the moment he's off the track, the helmet's off, and you can just see the to the face going on. Just not happy. Still believes there's more. Like, there's a part of me that almost wants to say Aaron after seeing good starts this weekend, but then it still trended back to kind of his usual spot quick enough where I'm like, okay, we got 2 good starts, but between the heat and the main, both hole shots, I believe. But it didn't result in that much better result. I mean, Plessinger still got beat by Ferrandis, who's riding with a really bummed shoulder at the moment. So Barsha's kind of my standout of like he could jump that into that conversation of wow me.
We're agreed that Plessinger really needs to do something here for his contract for 2026.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Aaron's just been on these 1-year deals over and over, and after winning last year, you would just think like we're not going to be in this position, but that's a tough one again. Like seeing two really good starts. Like if those starts would have ended in a fifth or a sixth place in the main, I would be very happy talking about progress. I don't know. Good starts are good starts, but I don't know if I'm labeling this progress going back to ninth. And I haven't looked at his lap chart. I don't know if there was an issue. I don't remember seeing or hearing anything. So I could be just completely talking out my you-know-what right now. But yeah. Last guy on the lead lap, correct? Yeah. Whole shot to last guy on the lead lap. Ouch.
Let's finish 450s with this. Lars Lindstrom took to Instagram on Saturday to clarify that although not a certainty, they are entertaining the idea of a fill-in rider. So which rider in the pits, screw Honda HRC Progressive, which rider in the pits will get the blessing of being able to make use of the Yoshimura power that sits within that motorcycle?
The three names I've heard thrown in the conversation are Shane, Dino, and Dylan.
Well, thanks for that very riveting information. No one could have figured that out.
Well, no, that's like legitimately who they've talked about. And the whole freeze thing was not true. I checked with Brand Orkley on that. That was somebody throwing something on IG or on Twitter to see if it would stick. I mean, naturally, as parts like Shane only had a 6-race deal funding wise, so there's like Joey's tied to the team. The team has new sponsorship, quad lock, all that stuff. Shane, I think, has, overall round to round outperformed Joey consistently wise. It would be a cool storyline. There's a part, of course, that goes, Dino's got the world tour thing. It would be from a fanfare standpoint, having him do 5 or 6 races on the bike would be really cool. And then there's a tie-in with the boys and Dylan where they were thinking about potentially putting Dylan on the bike, but I don't know. I'm going to lean towards Shane at this point, likely gets it.
Okay, hard disagree that Shane has consistently outperformed Joey this year. Hard disagree. Hard, just to be clear. 2, if I'm Honda, and I understand, don't need to explain to me about contracts and quad lock and all of that, but if I'm Honda, my first port of call is I am doing all I can with Yariv to figure out a way to have Joey. And I'm not moving on to Dean, Shane, or Dylan until I have exhausted all options and I'm certain that Joey is not an option. Because in my opinion, of the available candidates on Honda machinery, Joey is far and away number one without contest. But I feel like you strongly disagree, as you're clearly pulling up the point standings to
I'm just trying to remember what Ferrandis' results race to race have been compared to Joey's. Joey's had
you said Shane
the 7th. I'm just looking at all of them period here real quick.
Okay, that's fine. You just take your time. Let us know when you're ready.
Yeah. Shane, I mean, Joey's had Barry Chain's gone, 13, 17, 17, 14, 9, 12. Joey's gone 21, 10, 11, 15, 7, 13. So, yes, Joey has outperformed Shane. Not by a massive margin, but yes, he has.
And also, but I'm talking even results aside. I feel like on track potential performance.
I think Joey, yes, I think Joey on track performance is higher. You're gonna call me PS on this. I think on track between Joey and Dylan. I think Dylan has a higher ceiling than the two currently. Not by a lot, but I do think the ceiling is actually higher for Dylan than Joey.
I could understand that, but personally, I would argue that Dylan's ceiling is more obtainable, more predictable, whereas Joey's is more who knows what this can be. Yeah. Put it this way, and this is crazy. I even understand this is crazy before I say it. Put Dylan on the bike and put Joey on the bike, I think there's more chance of Joey getting on the podium. But some way down the line in a crazy set of circumstances, I just feel like no matter what happens, Ferrandis will be a consistent 6, 7, 8 guy, whereas Joey could go 10, 7, 4, 11. You get what? I feel like there's just more chance of a random out of the park result.
We'll see. There's other factors. I think there's so many because do they really need the results? Because you're never going to compare to the boys' results. Is some of it just purely what's a feel-good story? That's where Dean could be a huge play on this. Do they need results?
But also,
factor.
who knows? Dean is such a risk Because although he's racing, like, you don't... I mean, in this field now, okay, yeah, he's going to be 10 to 15. So I guess that's fine in this current field. There's no way he would miss a main in this field, I wouldn't think. Yeah. But also, speaking of Yoshimura, the Lawrences are out. There wasn't a Honda HRC Progressive bike on track in Detroit. What is Yoshimura going to do? Oh, no, wait. They won in Europe because Yoshimura just wins no matter what. Tim Geiser went 2-1 in the Italian Championship today, his final preseason race before Argentina. And if you want to make a lot of money, find somewhere to bet on Tim Geiser winning the MXGP Championship, because that may be the most sure thing in motocross history. In fact, I'm already prepared to give him a number one plate. And in fact, I'm procrastinating on previewing the MXGP season via a podcast because I have no motivation to discuss it, because in my mind, open and shut, Tim Geiser is your champion. Congrats. So congrats to Yoshimura as well, by default.
You're going to start working on that plate form right now?
Yeah, like it's done. It's done. Forgot to mention, Seth Hammaker had food poisoning, hence why he dropped so far back in the main event. Nick Romano just posted on Instagram that he did blow his knee out. He was non-weight bearing until Friday, but he is still racing. He's going to be in Daytona. And there was another miscellaneous note that I forgot about.
Volan keeps having clutch issues. The team's running an auto clutch with him, and he keeps frying him going race time. So they don't do it during the week, but clearly come race time, he's overusing it or something. And some teams have run him in the past, but they just don't last typically as long as a standard clutch if you try to use them like a standard clutch if you go full Eli Tomac on them. So I know they're really struggling. That's been their nonstop issue, is getting his clutches through race conditions.
Are we done?
I think that's it.
Well, actually, let's end with this question. A lot of negativity around Monster Energy AMA Supercross pre-Detroit. And admittedly, qualification, the heat races weren't exactly thrilling. But the two main events, the drama, the controversy, the questions, really uplifted the mood, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Has there been that much negativity?
Yeah, there was a lot of people who were, social media people.
Because of the injuries. The one, actually, here's my one negative take from Detroit, and tell me what you think on this one. I forgot to bring this up. We were quite happy with the tracks across the first couple rounds. I was not a fan of the Detroit track, actually.
No, it was basic, but credit where it's due. There were a lot of places to set up passes, and I would argue that typically a layout like that doesn't work as well as it did this past weekend, and we got the most out of the situation still. Maybe. I don't know.
I'm also curious, of course, once we finally get, to this point, I said something to Anderson at Tampa, and he corrected me when I talked about upcoming rounds soft, and he was like, oh, Detroit's pretty hard packed, and this is pretty hard packed, and he was right. I always forget, just because you move east doesn't mean automatically that we have, that much different terrain. So I'm also very curious to see what happens when we hit our first, what we would consider true East Coast track in terms of soil conditions.
Well, it'll be Indy, won't it, at this point? Because Arlington is never that bad.
Yeah, Arlington's never that bad. Daytona is just Daytona. It's its own thing. So, yeah, Indy is going to be our first one for round 9.
Well, thank you to Decal Works, Yoshimura, Fox Racing, and Yamaha Motor USA for their support of the Vital MX post-race show. Thank you to all of you for listening every single week. We're now deep into the season. I cannot believe that we are past round 6. This has honestly gone by in the blink of an eye, in my humble opinion, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around. But here we are, and we will be back in 7 days' time to discuss round 7 of 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross Arlington 250SX West, a Triple Crown, so much to come. Thank you for your support, and we will see you next week.